Our Promethium reserves are desperately low. Infiltrate the Promethium pumping station in this kill zone and take what you can, by any means necessary.
Hello and welcome to JamHammer. In this video, we're going to see an indomitable kill team from a Necron Tomb World taking on Astra Militarum veterans recruited from the Death Korps of Krieg. You can find the timecodes for each stage of this battle report in the description below, so you can jump straight to any of these, as well as links to help support the channel, including affiliates and a subscription one too. When I recently checked, a massive 97% of people who watch JamHammer content aren't subscribers, so please do subscribe if you enjoy this video or the channel, as it really helps and costs you nothing too. Our two kill teams will be taking part in a matched play game from the Ictarius mission pack, Fuel Run. The primary objective for this mission focuses around the pumping station here at the centre of the table. In particular, on the fuel outlet pipe located on the lower left side of the terrain piece. Once per turning point, while within 1 inch of this pipe, operatives will be able to spend an action point on Siphon the Good Stuff. This action will score them a victory point, and also means that a refined fuel objective token, we're using these cargo containers for this, can be placed 1 inch away from the siphoning operative too. These tokens, plus another 4 that are already set up on the map near the 2 scrap piles in these opposing corners, are under the control of the player with the highest action point limit within 1 inch of them, and they can be picked up. At the end of the battle, these objectives are worth 2 VPs each for whichever team controls them. If a team controls at least one of the refined tokens from the fuel pipe at the end of the battle, they will also score an additional 3 VPs. However, there's a complication. Any operative that is carrying an objective marker and comes under fire is liable to explode. If the shooter retains a crit when attacking, then an additional D6 is rolled afterwards. On a 6, the fuel detonates, the carrier and anyone in a 2 inch radius suffer a mortal wound, and that objective is then removed from play. Exciting stuff. So, the kill team has been set out according to the map provided with mission 1.3, and we're using these rows of white D6 to chart out the deployment zones in each corner. Now, let's roll off to see who will be attacking and who will be defending. I'll be rolling the orange dice throughout this video, and my partner will be rolling the white. And my veterans get the choice. I want to anticipate the Necron's deployment, so opt to play as the attacker and will set up in the top left corner of the kill zone. First though, let's meet our teams who will be trying to extract as much Promethium from the kill zone as possible without going up like a Roman candle. Our Necron forces from an unknown yet relentlessly expansionist tomb world are bringing an Immortal and Warrior Fire team to the table. Going from left to right then, we have 3 Immortals packing Gauss blasters that have also been augmented with Starfire cores. Backing them up are these 3 warriors bringing Gauss flayers, plus at the front here are 2 more warriors hoping to close with the enemy and use their Gauss reapers to good effect. And finally, leading the team is an Immortal leader with a standard Gauss blaster but adorned with a sempiternal weave. Opposing the robot menace will be my veteran guardsmen, who I'm hoping will put their speedy human feet to good use in securing some fuel for the glory of the Imperium. I've selected a diverse squad of specialists to see this through, starting over on the left here with a hardened veteran. Then we've got a medic, a sniper, a confidant vet with bolt pistol and chainsword, a comms vet, a zealot, a spotter, a demo vet, a much needed plasma gunner, and, leading them all, a sergeant bringing a plasma pistol and power sword. My equipment budget was entirely spent on providing all of my lasgun-bearing operatives with hotshot capacitors, except for the spotter vet, who will, hopefully, be too busy calling in mortar strikes. Speaking of which, the veterans are also bringing ancillary support along, and have selected the marked airstrike and strafing run tactical assets to help clear the Necrons from the Octarius sector. Our TACOP decks have already been selected. The Tomb World will be using the black cards and, although I didn't know it at the time, have gone for Central Control, Deadly Marksman, who will be their immortal leader, and lastly, Damage Limitation. My veterans will be using the orange cards, and I went for ones that I hope will synergize well. Protect Assets, Hold the Line, and my second faction TACOP, Stand Fast. The Tomb World are the defenders, so we're setting up their barricades and operatives first. They place one on the left side of the board to give their operatives some cover as they plod towards objectives 1 and 3, while I do likewise to protect my veterans on this flank. Then, the Necrons are putting one over on the right flank, near to objectives 2 and 4, and the Guard, again, decide to do the same. Onto deployment, and the Necrons have split themselves into 3 smaller squads. They have their 2 Reaper Warriors plus an Immortal on the left side of their zone, 2 Immortals in the centre, and their leader, plus the 3 Warriors with Flayers on the right behind the ramshackle wall. The veterans, meanwhile, are basically going in one long conga line along their edge. There's 5 near to the scrap pile on the right, including the Sergeant and its comms vet, while on the left, behind the building, are the other 5 operatives, including the Plasma Gunner and Sniper. Every unit on each team is apparently super paranoid of being shot at such an early stage of the game, so all the operatives on the table are going in with conceal orders. Now that our squads are ready, we reveal our scouting options, with the Tomb World choosing to recon, while I will be fortifying. We carry these out with the Necron leader dashing along the edge towards Objective 4, and the veterans placing a 3rd barricade in the centre, this time near to the fuel pump. These scouting choices mean that the Tomb World will take the initiative as we go into the first turning point. Each team increases their CP by 1, going up to 3 each. The veterans, however, are immediately going back down to 2 as they spend a point on Into the Breach. After a lot of searching on the net, we decided this ploy meant that each of my vets now gets the chance to perform a dash outside of the firefight stage. I carry this out with my Hardened vet and Plasma Gunner popping out around that building, while the rest are getting as close as they can to it for an easier climb in the next phase. Over on the right, the Sergeant and comms move up to the barricade, while the other 3 make for the fuel pump. The Sergeant also takes this opportunity to call out the order to move, move, move. The comms vet goes down by 1 APL to relay this to the rest of the team. With the Astra Militarum line now a few inches closer and poised to advance further, we each reveal a target. Tomb World reveal their Central Control TACOP, and veterans reveal Stand Fast. Into the firefight then, and the Necrons open by moving their leader into range of Objective 4 and picking it up. The veterans activate their Confidant, who uses the boost from the order to move up into range of the fuel outlet pipe. For a 2nd AP, he siphons the good stuff, places a fuel objective token an inch away, and scores an early victory point for the team. The Confidant issues his directive now, meaning that the medic is activated to move alongside and uses his 2nd action to pick up the fuel canister. Back over to the right edge, and the Necrons are performing a move and dash with one of their warriors trying to advance on Objective 2 as quickly as they can. The veterans activate their demo vet, who moves 7 inches towards the centre, then spends his other action on placing an explosive charge near to the fuel outlet pipe, then uses the free dash to almost get to safety by that barricade. With the fuel siphoned, picked up, and the central objective now wired to blow, the Necrons are going to have a tough time scoring for their revealed secondary this turn. But they activate one of their central mortals and move and dash underneath the balcony, and end up dangerously close to the flimsy humans that have rushed in and left themselves exposed to return fire in the next turn. The sergeant on the left uses a move and dash to get himself into range of both objectives 1 and 3, securing them for now. But will he hold on to them? The Necrons counter by moving one of their warriors with a Reaper up and into cover near to objective 3 with its sights set on the guard's leader. Seeing his sergeant is in peril, the comms vet moves up to support and hunkers down into cover of the scrap pile and helps to control objective 1. Back onto the right flank, and another warrior is activated to move and dash towards the central objective. In the centre, the veterans activate their sniper, who uses a move and dash himself to scale up the building and dig himself into an advantageous position overlooking objectives 2 and 4. Apparently undeterred by this expert marksman, the Tomb World slugs another warrior with a move and dash to join the others over on the right. Behind the building, and the Zealot is following the sniper's example with an increased move and dash being more than sufficient to scale the building and take cover behind the parapet above. The Immortal on the left side has just enough range to perform a move and dash to get up onto some high ground as well. Continuing to fill up these positions, the Spotter is activated to move and dash to a vantage point as well. The last Immortal moves up but is unable to scale the building this turn. The Hardened vet behind the barricade watches on as the hordes of clanking monstrosities fill the horizon. He brings up his comms system and relays into the Imperial Navy, calling for a strafing run to thin out the enemy ranks. The largest of the Necrons, the Immortal leader, is chosen as the primary target, and a line of bullets suddenly peppers the sands of the kill zone as a craft swoops in, striking 3 more warriors in the process. Rolling for damage then, and most of the shots go wide, but a crit is retained. Since the leader is carrying a fuel canister, this could cause some damage to the closely packed warriors. With a 2-up save, the Immortal does fail 1 and uses the regular saves here to shrug that crit, getting plinked for 2 damage. The first warrior in line is hit with 2 crits and 2 hits, and only manages to save 1 crit, so we'll be taking 7 damage from this, injuring it. Oh, the second warrior gets annihilated with 4 crits rolled. It does manage to save 1 of these, but that's still 9 damage going through, which is just enough to incapacitate it. And if we needed further proof that the orange dice in these battle reports are rigged, the third warrior is hit with 2 crits and 4 hits. Some spectacular saving throws though, with a crit and 2 hits negated, meaning another 7 damage coming in, and this Necron barely survives. Finally, rolling for the fuel canister, but it remains inert. After the dust settles, that's 2 warriors with injuries and another is removed as a casualty. My partner decides to use her resurrection protocols now though, and a token is placed to mark this. Moving even slower now, the warrior on the left hobbles over to support the other Reaper model, bearing down on the veteran sergeant. The plasma gunner, seeing that there is still a dangerous amount of Necrons clustered around objectives 2 and 4, decides to double back and scales up the building instead. The hardened veteran, thinking the same, darts around to the other side of the building to help support the other guardsman holding the fuel pipe. At the end of the first turning point, the veteran guard team have 3 objectives under their control, so score a VP for their stand fast secondary, while the Necrons have yet to seize the central zone, so get nothing for theirs. The Guard are off to an early lead then, with 2 VPs to 0, plus a brutal strafing run that has slowed down several of the Necrons. But with resurrection protocols ready to go, and living metal helping to bring their operatives back to full strength, the Tomb World are still in a strong position. Their units are encircling on both flanks, and their elite immortals are slowly but surely punching through to the central objective. With most operatives now in sight of the enemy, we look to be in for a real firefight as we go into the second turning point. rolling off for initiative first, and we both fail miserably. But with the Tomb World winning at last round, this means that the veterans will be taking the initiative this time. They go up to 3 CP, while the Necrons go up to 4. With the Necron hordes in their sights, the veterans spend this straight away to overcharge their lasguns. Not to deprive the Tomb World the pleasure of melting his men, the sergeant calls out the order to take aim, and the comms vet's APL is reduced and relaying it to the team again. The vets then reveal their last 2 targets, hold the line, and protect assets. The Tomb World in turn reveal damage limitation, roll for their resurrection protocols, and then restore 2 wounds apiece to their damaged operatives. Needing 2 then, or above, to bring the warrior back, they, of course, roll a 1. No resurrection this turn. Opening move then, and seeing the hulking immortal powering up his Gauss blaster, the Confidant is activated to siphon the good stuff while he can for another VP. The token is placed nearby, and the brave guardsman revs up his chainsword and charges headlong into the immortal to prevent him from shooting. He issues one final directive to the medic as he disappears into the fray, and that vet is activated now. Unable to dash with the fuel canister, he decides to open fire on the mortal above. The medic overcharges his lasgun and fires wildly at the Necron, missing all but 1 shot. The immortal, reduced to 2 dice, rolls for defense. And if we needed further proof that the white dice in these battle reports are cursed, rolls 2 more 1s and takes 4 damage. The medic then uses his last action to move as far away as possible with his objective marker. The Necrons, identifying the sheer amount of guns on the terrain above, activate their leader with the fuel canister now and use a move and dash to get it into cover behind the ramshackle wall. In a similar vein, the Sergeant is activated and uses his actions to pick up Objective 3, then moves away with it into cover. One of the Necron warriors on the right then moves up and around the scrap pile to pick up Objective 2. The Hardened Vet is activated now and comes around the corner into cover of the barricade and fires an overcharged volley at the same immortal up on the gantry. It's a great result with 2 crits and a hit, but the immortal passes their 2 remaining rolls and oh my goodness, will you look at that. My partner knocks one of the crits into a regular hit and then uses the 2 saves to negate 2 hits. So this immortal should have taken 7 damage here, which is enough to kill it, but didn't notice it at the time, and instead it remains in play with 3 wounds remaining and is injured. Absolutely scandalous. The cheaty Necron now activates and shambles over to get a view of my demo vet below. It opens fire with its blaster and, even with the detriment to its ballistic skill, manages 3 hits and a crit owing to the Starfire core. I roll for defense, but this guy is completely obliterated, removing both him and his very vital explosive device from the table. Before he goes down though, I spend a CP on In-Death Atonement, and the demo vet fires back at his opponent, the very aptly named Immortal. The impediment of being dead is too much for the vet though, and he only scores 1 hit, with the much more successfully dead Necron deflecting the shot. The other Immortal is activated now, and this time is able to make it up onto the building and is given an engage order to open fire on the medic running away with the fuel. Luckily, the cursed dice prevail and only 1-shot hits. A CP is spent on a reroll and just about makes it into 2 hits. My medic is completely out in the open, so really need to make at least 1 of these. The medic takes a whopping 5 wounds and is injured, but manages to survive. The Zealot on the building is activated next and offers an inspiring primer to his sniper compatriots. Then he engages the wounded Necron below with an overcharged hotshot. Luckily, the Sergeant's order allows that 1 to be re-rolled, but still only manages 1 crit, and the Necron manages to deflect this. The Tomb World then activate their warrior on the left to move and dash almost within range to contest Objective 1. The sniper, inspired by the words of the Zealot, levels his silent sniper rifle at the warrior below holding onto Objective 2. All of these hit, and, thanks to the primer, the 5 is counted as a crit, so that's 3 mortal wounds going through, and the potential for some unstable fuel. The Necron rolls for defense and deflects 1 hit, but with 12 damage now coming through, not even a reroll could save it here, and it's cut down by the high velocity rounds. Before that though, I rolled to see if the fuel explodes, and it does! Objective 2 is removed from play, as is the Necron warrior, but resurrection protocols are played now, and a token is placed there to mark it. Eager to score for their secondary, the injured warrior in the centre is activated for a move and dash towards the centre of the table. The plasma gunner then moves out from the guard ranks so that he can draw a line of sight to the immortal leader below. He powers up his ancient weapon and fires off 4 overcharged bolts. And scores 2 1s. Thank goodness for the order. He rerolls these into a crit and another miss. That's a total of 16 damage coming in, and the Necron is reduced to a single defense die. Retaining it as a cover save would still mean death, so my partner elects to roll it, hoping for a critical save. But it of course comes out at a 1. In desperation, another CP is spent on a reroll, but with a 5, it's still not the result needed, and the leader is killed. With resurrection protocols already used this turn, the operative is removed from play and Objective 4 is dropped, but after rolling for it, doesn't explode. It does however mean that this is the second Tomb World operative to be incapacitated near an objective this turn, so we'll score the veterans a 4th VP at the end for protect assets. The other Reaper warrior on the left is activated next to move and dash closer to Objective 1 as well. Meanwhile, back on the gantry, the spotter calls in a mortar strike on the wounded warrior below. A round comes screaming down and smashes into the Necron, causing 3 hits and a crit. The warrior makes one of their saves, but with 2 fails takes enough damage that it's incapacitated and removed from the tabletop. Underneath the nearby structure, the Immortal is locked in deadly melee with the Confidant veteran. The Necron is activated and performs a fight action. Every one of its bayonet swipes hits, as well as a crit, while the veteran swings wildly with his chainsword and, even with the balanced reroll, only manages 2 hits. The Necron immediately strikes with a crit, causing 5 wounds. The veteran, seeing the end is near, uses his last ounce of strength to drive his chainsword into the metal behemoth with a strike before it cuts him down with another hit. The Immortal uses its last action to move up and secure the fuel outlet pipe, as well as the centre of the table. The last guardsman, the comms vet, even with warriors bearing down on him, selflessly overcharges his lasgun and fires on the somehow still alive Immortal above. 2 hits and 2 1s. Once again, blessed by the Sergeant's order, he manages not to melt himself and instead turns this into a crit and another miss. The Immortal deflects the crit, but the other 2 hits go through, and this time, it's put down for good. At the end of the turning point, the veterans score for protect assets, another VP for stand fast, and a final one for keeping the Necron menace from their lines, meaning a total of 6 victory points. The Tomb World also score their first VP for managing to control the centre of the table. They don't, however, score for their damage limitation as they lost quite a few operatives to the deadly salvo from the guardsman lines, and their marksman has been incapacitated. The veterans are still in the lead, but with most of the points for the primary being scored at the end of this mission, the game is far from theirs. The Tomb World warriors are bearing down on the vulnerable left flank objectives. There are 2 deadly Immortals covering the centre, and with 2 warriors likely to resurrect on the right flank, there's still plenty to play for as we go into the 3rd turning point. The Tomb World take back the initiative this round and tick up to 3 CP, with the veterans going back up to 2. No more targets to reveal now, but the Necrons are spending a CP on the implacable march ploy, while the veterans are overcharging their lasguns again. Rolling for the 2 Necron warrior tokens, and this time both are successful, so they're back up with D3 wounds each, which comes out at 3 wounds for this one, and just 1 wound for the other. Living Metal then comes into effect, and bumps all the Necrons up by 2 wounds each. For the veterans, the Sergeant is again giving the order to take aim, with the comms vet relaying the order to the whole squad. First activation of this turn sees the Immortal in the centre of the table siphon the good stuff for a new token, as well as scoring a second VP for their team. The Necron is then going to open fire with its blaster on the hardened veteran behind the barricade. It's not a great roll, but thanks to the Starfire core, does mean that a crit and 2 hits are made. The vet retains 1 save for being in cover, and fails the other, so that's 9 damage coming in, more than enough to incapacitate him. Luckily, this operative is a 5-up feel no pain, so just going to roll all these at once. And he's done it! Enough saves here that he survives with 2 wounds remaining, but will be injured. The veterans activate their medic now, who will be taking another overcharge shot at the Immortal on the high ground, but at a reduced ballistic skill now. It's a poor display, but does manage 1 hit. And the Immortal fails both of its remaining saves, meaning 3 damage does go through. The medic then uses his reduced move to duck out of line of sight and huddle up with his fuel canister. The Reaper Warrior on the left is activated now and moves into range contest objective 1, then lets loose with his weapon against the comms vet. 2 hits and a crit procs P1, so only 2 saves and both fail, meaning that the comms vet has relayed his last order and is removed from the tabletop as a casualty. The Sergeant, blinded by the fury at losing his comms, moves up with his fuel canister and opens fire on the other warrior with his plasma pistol. Firing overcharge shots here, he absolutely messes it up and only scores a single hit. The warrior, even with just a single save, manages to deflect this, and it's not looking good for the veteran's leader here. That same warrior is activated now and, making full use of its healed injuries and the ploy, flanks the Sergeant and opens fire with its Reaper. It's a hit plus a crit, so AP1 again here, and the Sergeant luckily managed to deflect 1 of these on his armour, reducing him to 3 wounds remaining. Since he's carrying fuel and that's a crit, this means another roll to see if it explodes. Boom! In a devastating display, the canister engulfs the area, inflicting a mortal wound on the Sergeant, as well as the closer of the 2 warriors, and Objective 3 is removed from play. Up on the building, and the plasma gunner decides to move out across the terrain in order to draw a line of sight to the Immortal perched opposite. He overcharges his gun and lets loose a brutal salvo with 2 crits and a hit landing on the Necron. It makes its armor save, but with 11 damage going through, it's more than enough to slay it outright, though resurrection protocols mean it could come back next round. The recently resurrected warrior near Objective 4 moves and dashes out towards the fuel canister in the centre. The Zealot offers a primer to the sniper again, then opens fire with his overcharged hotshot lasgun at the injured Necron below. A hit and a crit, but the warrior amazingly manages to roll save and a crit, negating both shots. This warrior now uses his action points to scrabble over the scrap pile and then dash behind the barricade, hoping to get within range to claim Objective 4. The sniper watches it shamble away, but instead decides to move off across the terrain with the plasma gunner and goes loud to engage the Immortal below. And that's 4 shots from the long las coming in, and that's 2 crits causing 6 damage straight away, plus the other 2 hit. The Immortal miraculously makes all of its saves, but still another 6 damage, meaning the Necron has been incapacitated. All of the Tomb World have been activated now, but there is the opportunity for an Overwatch shot back on the left flank. The warrior here charges up his Reaper again and shoots it at the grievously wounded Sergeant. 3 misses and just 1 crit going through, but the normal save isn't enough to block this, and the veteran's leader is removed as a casualty. Back on the rooftop, and the spotter is given an engage order and is going to try and leap daringly onto the fuel pump to block the Tomb World for scoring on their secondary. Needing anything but a 1, he spectacularly fails and stops short at the edge of the train. With no more valid targets for Overwatch, the hardened vet is activated now and limps over to the central fuel pump and manages to just about get within view of the Necron there, so opens fire with overcharged rounds. A crit and a hit go through, but just enough to incapacitate the warrior. As a final act, the plasma gunner calls in a marked airstrike against the 2 warriors that killed his beloved sergeant. His furious wrath must have been felt by the pilot, as 2 crits and 3 hits are scored against the first warrior, reducing it to a tangled mass of wires. Just the 1 hit for the other on the right caught up in the blast, and, with a critical save, takes no damage. The warrior on the left is removed though. After an intense round of shooting, the veterans have managed to incapacitate 3 Tomb World operatives near to objectives, scoring them a VP for protect assets. They score 1 VP for hold the line, as well as another for standing fast on 2 objectives thanks to the medic and hardened vet, resulting in 9 total victory points so far for this skirmish. The Tomb World lost operatives and crucially lost control of the centre of the board, so gain no points for their secondary. They are in place to hold 2 objectives next round though, and still have the opportunity to resurrect their immortal, so could wrestle control of some much needed fuel canisters as we go into the 4th and final round. Rolling off, and it's another draw, so the veterans will be taking the initiative. They go up to 2 CP, and the Tomb World go up to 3. No ploys or orders from the veterans with both leaders slain, but the Necrons are spending a CP on Implacable March again. They also roll for the token, and the Immortal is resurrected, and with a 6 roll for wounds, will be back in pretty good shape with living metal, but is still injured. The warrior on the right, however, has recovered enough wounds to no longer be injured. First activation, and the hardened vet is straight away going to siphon the good stuff for a VP, bringing his team up to 10 scored. The fuel token is placed an inch away, and with his second action, is going to open fire on the Immortal that's resurrected above. No overcharging this time, and he only manages a single hit, which the Necron easily deflects. The Immortal in turn is activated, moves up to the edge, and returns fire at the hardened vet below. A hit and a crit means one of those misses gets turned into a hit. The veteran manages to deflect the crit, but still 8 damage to try and absorb with the feel no pain. Here we go. Ooh, managed to make quite a few, but 4 wounds means that this veteran is finally taken out of the game. In retaliation, the sniper takes a shot at the Immortal opposite. It manages just 3 hits, and with no primer this turn, the 5 can't be bumped up to a crit. The Necron only manages to defend against 1 of these though, which would be enough to take him down again, so a CP is spent on a reroll, and this time it's a success, so the Immortal survives with 2 wounds remaining. With his other action, the sniper is going to drop down from the parapet and move to within an inch of the 2 fuel containers to claim them for his team. Over on the right flank, the rejuvenated Necron warrior is given an engage order and makes use of the Implacable March to get within range of Objective 4 and then fire his flare at the spotter above. It's a great result, with every shot finding its mark. Rolling for defense, and the veteran butts up a good fight, managing to repel 2 of these and surviving with just a single wound remaining. The plasma gunner is activated now, and he opens fire on the Immortal with regular shots this time, which is lucky because he does roll a 1. 2 shots do hit though, and the Necron fails one of these, and it's enough for it to be taken down for the final time. The last warrior goes back into concealment, picks up objective 1, then uses its other action to scrabble over the scrap pile and duck into cover behind the building there. Up on the other building, the Zealot offers his primer to the spotter before letting loose with his lasgun at the warrior holding objective 4. A nice result with 3 shots landing, but the Necron takes 1 on the cover and manages to save the other 2, resulting in no damage taken. The same warrior is then activated for an overwatch shot, and it continues to fire at the spotter on the edge of the terrain. We forgot about the reduction to ballistic skill, so counted 3 shots landing here, and although the veteran does manage to save 2 of these, we thought 1 shot got through and took him out of action. With their last activation, the veterans move the medic out from behind cover, trying to get a shot at the warrior holding objective 1, but with the Necron in concealment, it ducks back into cover, meaning that the medic is forced to pass his last action. So, at the end of the final turning point, we have the Necrons holding objectives 2 and 4, meaning they score 4 VPs for a total of 6 for the game. The veterans, however, score another VP each for hold the line and stand fast, bringing them up to 12. For the primary, the sniper is within an inch of 2 fuel objectives, while their medic is holding another 1, meaning 6 VPs are scored here, plus an additional 3 VPs since the team is in control of at least 1 refined fuel token. This means that our veteran guardsmen have won the day with 21 victory points to the Tomb World 6. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the bell to be notified of new videos being released. This was a really fun but quite stressful game to play. As a veteran, I was very aware that my operatives would disintegrate if a Necron so much as pointed a gun in their general direction. My plan was to make as much use of my mobility early on to rush objectives and secure points. Unfortunately, since most of the scoring was at the end, my operatives weren't able to survive this long and I was pushed off both flanks. Luckily, 2 of the objectives on the side of the table were blown up, or the Necrons could certainly have held onto them. Being able to get the bulk of my decent shooters up to a vantage point in the first turn really helped wipe a few of the Tomb World off the table too. The Necrons really did suffer from being such slow units, not able to bring their firepower to bear until the 3rd turning point, where even with a severely diminished force, they managed to remove more than half of my kill team from the table. Fortunately by then I'd banked a few points from my secondaries, denied them theirs, and had enough operatives alive to lock down a few refined fuel canisters in the centre for the primary. There'll be more kill team videos being released in the near future, so please do keep an eye out for new content coming soon to JamHammer. In the meantime, there are plenty of other videos available on the channel, including a few that are on screen now for you to click on. Thanks again for watching.